The starship Elysium glided through the void, its hull shimmering under the distant light of dying suns. On board, Commander Elias Voss, a human of unremarkable background but extraordinary resolve, reviewed the latest transmission from the Galactic Council. It was not the usual political discourse he had grown accustomed to. It was an order from Queen Seraphina herself. The Queen of the Andari Dominion, feared across star systems for her ruthlessness and commanding presence, had summoned him to the capital planet, Lyra Prime. She was known for bending the strongest leaders to her will, yet something about Elias intrigued her. Perhaps it was the audacity with which he challenged protocol during the Battle of Vesper 4, when his small fleet had outmaneuvered an entire Andari armada. Elias's ship descended through the atmosphere of Lyra Prime, piercing a sky painted in violet and gold. The sprawling city below glistened with towers that seemed to float in the clouds. This was the seat of Seraphina's power, and he had little time to prepare. When he arrived at the throne chamber, the queen was waiting, her presence more imposing than the tallest tower in Lyra Prime. Dressed in her ceremonial armor, she radiated authority. Every step she took echoed across the marble floor, a sound that demanded attention. "Commander Voss," she said, her voice a symphony of silk and steel. "You have defied my orders on multiple occasions. Yet here you are unharmed. Explain yourself." Elias bowed respectfully, but refused to soften his tone. "Your Majesty, defiance is not rebellion. I act in the best interest of those I lead. Sometimes that means bending commands to achieve victory." Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in calculation. Few humans dared to speak to her with such candor. Most would have cowered, yet here was one who wielded words like a weapon. "You understand the consequence of this," she said, circling him slowly. "Defiance could mean your death, or worse, a lifetime in the labor pits of Andari re-education." "I understand," Elias replied calmly, "but I also understand victory. And sometimes leadership requires more than blind obedience." Seraphina paused, studying him as if reading a text written in an unfamiliar language. Then, to his astonishment, she laughed, a sound rare and sharp. "Most humans are predictable. You are not." Over the following weeks, Elias was confined within the palace under a strange mixture of surveillance and leniency. He attended council meetings, military briefings, and strategic war games, but Seraphina observed him more closely than anyone else. She issued commands, and he followed, but not blindly. Instead, he interpreted, negotiated, and occasionally redirected her orders for outcomes she had not imagined. It was during one of these tactical sessions that the shift began. They had gathered to plan a campaign against a rogue faction known as the Vorkari, a merciless band of space raiders threatening border worlds. Seraphina outlined her strategy with meticulous precision. "We strike at dawn. Deploy the fleet in the formation I have designed. No deviations." Elias leaned forward, pointing at the tactical map. "Your Majesty, if we anticipate the Vorkari's pattern based on the intelligence we have, a staggered formation would maximize our firepower while minimizing casualties. I propose a three-pronged approach rather than a linear strike." For a moment, Seraphina's gaze hardened. "You would defy my command?" "I would reinterpret it for efficiency." "Not defiance," he clarified. She studied him for a long moment, the room silent except for the soft hum of the starship's engines beneath the palace. Then slowly she nodded. "Very well. Implement your plan." The battle that followed was a resounding success. Reports flooded in of the Vorkari surrendering before the Andari could even board their ships. For the first time in her reign, Seraphina acknowledged publicly that a human, mere flesh and bone compared to her immortal lineage, had outmaneuvered her own strategy. It was then that something unexpected began to blossom between them. Each encounter carried an electric tension, a combination of mutual respect and curiosity. Elias spoke boldly, yet with the reverence due to her rank. Serafina listened intently, occasionally testing him with questions that no one else dared to ask. One evening, in the private observatory atop the palace, Elias found her alone, staring at the stars. The room was awash in the glow of distant constellations, and the weight of silence pressed between them. "You are unlike anyone I have known," Serafina admitted. Her voice, usually sharp and commanding, now carried a softness she rarely allowed. "I could say the same," Elias replied. "I never thought I'd find a queen I could speak to as an equal, let alone respect her judgment enough to challenge it." Her lips curved in a faint smile. "And yet you do, with audacity that borders on arrogance." "I prefer to call it honesty," he said lightly, though his heart raced. For a long moment, they simply observed each other, the tension between command and attraction thickening. Then, impulsively, Elias stepped closer. "May I?" Serafina tilted her head, intrigued but cautious. "You may." He reached out, brushing a strand of her hair from her face. The contact was electric, a spark that neither of them could deny. The queen, accustomed to controlling entire fleets, felt a strange vulnerability in the presence of a human who neither feared nor flattered her. "I did not expect this feeling," she murmured. "Neither did I," Elias admitted. The weeks that followed were a careful dance of strategy and subtle intimacy. They continued to plan campaigns, negotiate treaties, and oversee the Dominion's vast networks, but the unspoken tension between them grew into something undeniable. It was a romance built not on weakness or flattery, but on mutual challenge, respect, and the thrill of discovering the unexpected in one another. Yet the path was not without obstacles. Loyalists whispered rumors of impropriety, spies tried to manipulate the pair into conflict, and enemies exploited any perceived weakness. During a critical council meeting, a high-ranking general attempted to assassinate Elias under the guise of a miscalculated military exercise. Serafina intervened personally, her intervention swift and merciless. "You dare threaten him?" she demanded, her eyes blazing with fury. "You forget who commands this dominion." Elias, though unharmed, stepped forward and placed a hand on her arm, halting her wrath. "I can face threats myself, Your Majesty. I fight not because I cannot, but because I choose to stand with you." Her composure faltered slightly, a rare crack in her otherwise unyielding armor. "And that makes you dangerous," she said softly. "But also necessary," he added, his voice steady. "And desired." Desire. The word hung between them like a fragile star, luminous yet delicate. Serafina, the queen who had conquered worlds and bent generals to her will, felt an unfamiliar warmth in her chest. She realized that this human had done something no one else could. He had commanded not through fear, not through power, but through connection. Eventually, the Dominion stabilized, and the Queen summoned Elias to the throne chamber once more. This time, however, the air was different, less tension, more anticipation. She rose from her seat and approached him, her armor reflecting the starlight. "You have turned command into something I did not anticipate," she said. Her voice carried a mixture of awe and amusement. "Not obedience, not strategy, but connection. Perhaps even romance." Elias smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "I would rather command your trust than your fear. And if trust can lead to something more, I would embrace it." Serafina's laugh was soft, almost musical, bold, human audacity at its finest. "Very well." She extended her hand. Then let this dominion and its queen accept this, the unusual alliance. Elias took her hand, their fingers intertwining, and in that moment, the galaxy seemed to hold its breath. Command had shifted from rigid orders to mutual respect. Authority had transformed into affection, and the queen, the indomitable Seraphina, was genuinely, utterly shocked. From that day onward, the Dominion witnessed an era unlike any before. Battles were fought, treaties were brokered, and decisions were made with the rare combination of human ingenuity and royal authority. Elias became her advisor, confidant, and partner, not merely a commander, but a companion who could challenge her intellect and stir her heart. And while the stars above continued their silent dance, the queen and the human found their own rhythm, one that balanced power with tenderness, strategy with spontaneity, and duty with desire. A galaxy that had once feared Seraphina now marveled at her audacity.